All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Thanks for taking time out of your day to check the video out. We have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover here today. So do me a favor before we dive into today's topics. If you end up enjoying the video, make sure you leave it a like. Helps it out a lot. And if you are new here to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well. We're starting here with a pretty significant write-up from VGC. And they say here that ransomware group ransomed.vc claims to have successfully breached Sony Group and is threatening to sell a cache of data stolen from the Japanese company. While its claims remain unverified, Cybersecurity Connect reports that the relative ransomware newcomer has racked up an impressive amount of victims since bursting onto the scene last month. We have successfully compromised all of Sony's system, the group claimed, on both the clear and dark net. We won't ransom them. We will sell the data due to Sony not wanting to pay. Data is for sale. According to Cybersecurity Connect, the group has posted some proof of hack data, although it says that it is not particularly compelling information on the face of things. It includes what appears to be screenshots of an internal login page, an internal PowerPoint presentation, several Java files, and a file tree of the leak, which seemingly includes fewer than 6,000 files. The group listed a post date of September 28th, after which, if nobody purchases the data, is presumably when ransomed.vc will publish the data wholesale. Ransom.vc is said to be both a ransomware operator and a ransomware as a service organization. It claims to be a sector solution for addressing data security vulnerabilities within companies and also to be operating in strict compliance with GDPR and data privacy laws. In cases where payment is not received, we are obligated to report a data privacy law violation to the GDPR agency, the group says. So, yeah, this is something that just came out, and I don't have much to say on it other than I just want to make everybody aware that this is apparently something that's going on with Sony right now. Obviously, a lot of people are thinking back to the infamous 2011 PlayStation Network hack, which I don't know that this is on that same level. I don't know that this is even similar, but it does certainly not sound good if it's true for Sony here. So, yeah, just figured I would let you guys know. I'll be sure to update you when we learn more. Moving on from that, though, we have some pretty interesting information coming from PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan. This was previously redacted information. It was an interview between Jim Ryan and investors, and it was from February of 2022. All of the questions and answers have been unredacted, so I'm not going to go over all of them. There's a lot here. I did talk about it in my stream yesterday, so if you want to go down the whole thing and get an extensive breakdown, watch that stream. But I'm going to basically cover two of the most important questions and answers that came from this. The first question is, in order to double your first-party game revenue, how many of the 10 new games need to be big hits? Now, obviously, this is in reference to the 10 live service games. And Jim Ryan's response is, it would be naive for us to assume that all 10 will be massive successes. So that is not a necessary condition for us to double first-party revenue. That is certainly not what we're assuming. Clearly, the distinction between a hit and not a hit is not a binary one. And don't forget that as we do this, we will continue to publish the games that have served us so well over the years. These third-person, graphically beautiful, narrative-rich games will continue to be the bedrock of our first-party publishing business. Now, there is a typo here where it says first person, but obviously he's talking about third person. And this question and answer was significant for obvious reasons. The first and most important is Jim Ryan is making it clear to investors, and that's important to understand. This is not him, coming out and talking directly to the public or to the fans. He's talking to investors. He reassures them that these games that Sony has been making for, well over a decade now, that they're known for, that they clearly have developed an expertise in this area, and that the fans really love, these are not only going to continue, but they will remain what he calls the bedrock of their first-party publishing business. This should be very reassuring to anybody who has expressed concerns about Sony pursuing live service games and, wondering if this would take away from the single-player experience. Would we get less of those? Would there be less importance placed on them? Or worst case scenario, would Sony just stop making them? Well, what Jim Ryan's saying here is pretty much the opposite of that. I think it's also worth pointing out that, as you can see, what Sony's trying to do here with their pursuit of these live service games is to not only double first-party game revenue, but one of the things that Jim Ryan did talk about with investors is how they want to be able to rely more so on their own studios and their own games for revenue in general. Jim Ryan does believe that Sony is too reliant on third-party games and royalties, and we saw everything that happened with Sony and the concern over Call of Duty, and that's why. It's because of just how much money this big third-party game makes the PlayStation business. I think it's a very smart idea for Sony to kind of refocus and say, let's see if we can, do that ourselves and not have to rely on these third-party games. Now, whether or not they'll be successful, that remains to be seen. But the second question and answer here is, what would be the ideal mix for your first-party games going forward? How much will be live service games versus traditional third-person narrative-driven games? Jim Ryan responds by saying, we will continue to make third-person games like we always have, and we expect those to have slightly greater sales and profitability, reflecting our confidence in the long-term install base of PS5, as well as the fact that those games will make their way to PC, so we think the pie from those games will grow, but the growth will be incremental in nature. We think live service games will build on that foundation and take us to another level. So the reason why I think this is just as important is because Jim Ryan is once again reaffirming that not only are they going to continue to make these single-player games that they're known for, but that he believes they expect to have slightly greater sales and profitability, basically saying that he thinks there will be growth in this area, which is great news because I agree with that. I think there's still room to grow for PlayStation and their first-party single-player games. But he does say at the bottom here that he believes live service games will build on top of that foundation and take Sony to another level. And there's no doubt that if Sony can create a extremely successful live service game, even just one, that becomes one of the top played games, it could be very transformative for the PlayStation business. And what I mean by that is from a revenue standpoint, in the fact that it would create a massive safety net for Sony. And if anything, it would allow for much more investment into their studios in general and all different types of games. So yeah, there are obviously more questions and answers here, but it's pretty extensive. So I will have this linked down below. It's actually compiled here in a useful Reddit post. So go check that out if you want all of the questions and answers. But the final topic here is actually talking about Capcom. This is being reported by WCCF Tech. Capcom president and its chief operating officer was interviewed during the Tokyo Game Show 2023 event that ended yesterday. Speaking to Bloomberg when asked about a potential Microsoft acquisition offer, this is what he replied with, quote, "I would gracefully decline the offer because I believe it would be better if we were equal partners," end quote. Likewise, Capcom isn't interested in acquiring companies either, preferring organic growth. Quote, "I think there have been many M&A talks in the game industry. There was once a time where we were a target, but rather than acquiring an outside company, we prefer organic growth. It is important to train and develop human resources in-house in order to carry out growth strategies. I also believe we can utilize external partners, but we have no intention of acquiring companies." So, yeah, this is some pretty interesting stuff. I do want to add something here that Capcom's president said. He said in the same interview that he's becoming concerned with the growing cost of AAA game development, and he thinks that games right now are actually too cheap and there should be maybe a price increase, which is very interesting to hear. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are going to cringe at that and totally be against that. It's understandable. Video games are not cheap. They are $70, and we just recently had to accept that that's going to be the new standard price for games. I don't think anybody is eager to see them go from $70 to $80, but the financial reality of AAA game development and investment is exactly that. It is growing, but I want to get back to what he said about the Microsoft acquisition thing here, and I think it doesn't get any more clear-cut than that. Capcom flat out saying, we would not accept an acquisition offer from Microsoft, and they want to be independent. And I think the same applies to Sony and anybody else for that matter. I think Sony would have likely a better shot at trying to acquire Capcom because they're both Japanese companies, but I still think Capcom would turn that down. And this is actually great news, frankly. We talk about industry consolidation, and obviously acquisition talk is something that is more prevalent than ever, but when it comes to these bigger publishers, it is, I think, best that they remain independent. I think that's going to allow them to, as we see here, grow more organically, but also just allow them to produce their best work because they need to. And yeah, I think Capcom is kind of proof of that, right? I don't think anybody feels that Capcom should be acquired. I don't think that would lead to anything good, frankly. I think it's fine the way it is. So there you go. Capcom has no intentions of selling anytime soon. But that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. I hope you did find it informative. If you did, be sure to leave it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.